Welcome to Inside Athletic Training, a podcast from the Professional Baseball Athletic Trainers Society, where Major League and Minor League athletic trainers share insight into athletic training at the highest level. On episode 2 of Inside Athletic Training, we spoke with Corey Tremble, who recently completed his 15th season with the Detroit Tigers organization and his 10th as the Minor League Medical and Rehabilitation Coordinator. Following the 2017 season, the Tigers organization named him the Dwight Lowry Player Development Person of the Year. He was also named the Medical Coordinator of the Year by the Professional Baseball Athletic Trainers Society in both 2021 and 2022. Now let's get into the show. Corey, welcome to Inside Athletic Training. We're happy to have you on the show for episode 2. We like to start each show by asking our guests if they can share some information with our listeners about the Professional Baseball Athletic Trainers Society. Can you go ahead and share some information about PBATS and what the society means to you?
Sure. Well, first off, thank you for having me on, Sam. This is a great opportunity, and I love this format and this time that you're giving me to speak on my career and PBATS and everything professional baseball. When it comes to PBATS, the great part about PBATS is an educational foundation, and its backdrop is truly in the education realm for pushing athletic training, especially in baseball, forward. So for me, what's great about it is it gives another outlet for professionals within the ranks of baseball to give of themselves to something bigger than themselves. And that's where PBATS for me has kind of landed. It's been able to give me an outlet to improve my leadership capabilities and really push the profession forward, not just in my own little area with the Detroit Tigers. That's
great. That's super helpful for the listeners. So you're currently the Minor League Medical and Rehab Coordinator with the Detroit Tigers organization. You're also extremely passionate about the overall profession of athletic training in general. I'd love to learn more about your background and what paths led you to where you are today. So let's get started. Take me through your life growing up, where you're from, what you did as an athlete growing up, and also where you found your passion for athletic training.
Sure. So it all kind of started, I'm from North Jersey, and it all started with my love of the New York Yankees growing up as a big fan of them. And when Don Mattingly, who was my favorite player growing up, was retiring, I figured I was just going to step right in and be the next first baseman for the Yankees, and that was all she wrote. But unfortunately, that didn't happen, so I had to figure out a new path. And I was lucky enough in that area to see the media kind of give Gene Monahan, who was the longtime head athletic trainer for the New York Yankees, sort of like a celebrity status. And I always kind of gravitated to, I wonder what that guy does. I wonder what that role is. That seems like a pretty neat job, if you will. But I didn't know anything past that. And I was fortunate enough to have an athletic trainer at my high school named Rob Rayberg. And he was the one that really lit the fuse for me in the profession, kind of gave me my introduction into the profession as a senior in high school. I did a work study program as a senior in high school. So I knew going into college the path I wanted to go, and it was in sports medicine and athletic training. Now, at the time, I didn't know if it was going to be in baseball, but I knew that I wanted to be an athletic trainer. And as I got to undergrad at Florida Southern, that's when things kind of shifted to more of a baseball focus. And I had some great mentors at Florida Southern with Sue Stanley Green, who's Hall of Fame athletic trainer, University of Kentucky for many, many years. And she really pushed us all to do things bigger than we thought we could. So that was really the next step for me was linking in with a professional baseball team. And luckily enough, the Tigers do the spring training in the same city as Florida Southern is in Lakeland, Florida. And that's kind of where I was at. Now, obviously, growing up, I was a baseball player because, I thought I was going to take over for Donnie Baseball, but unfortunately that didn't happen. So, but that also gave me that added piece because I love the history of the game. I love watching baseball. I love being around baseball. So it's one of those things where if you can marry your profession with your love, it works out pretty well. And that's what I've been able to do because of growing up in a baseball family and being around the game and loving the history of it. It kind of gave me a leg up on the competition, if you will, about getting in because it never felt like, going to work or a job. It always felt like, and it's still to this day, I never get up and dread coming to the office. It's always what challenges are going to be there every day. And I look forward to that. And so, that's where I kind of started my professional love of athletic training, and it started early, and I knew I was focused early, and I was lucky. I find myself as one of the few, I think, that has that passion early on, but I knew as soon as I was around it as a senior in high school and then continued in college that this was where I was going to land, and this is what I was going to do.
Yeah, it's like all of us. We thought we were going to be the next great player in Major League Baseball, and of course, that dream dies for us all at some point. But moving on, you're one of the lucky ones who gets to stay around the game of baseball. Talk about what it's like getting into the world of professional baseball athletic training. First of all, at the minor league level, I know it's a necessary path to get to a hugely important position of being in charge of all the athletic trainers at each minor league affiliate level like you are now. But what were those early days in minor league baseball like for Corey?
That minor league baseball is the proving ground for a lot of athletic trainers. You learn to either love working here or you learn not to love working in this setting. Unfortunately for athletic training in general, we're locked into the setting that we work in a lot of the time. And so I feel that, you have to understand, like, is this setting for me or is it not? So starting out early on, I knew that I loved baseball and I loved being around baseball. So that was an easy in for me to know that, okay, no matter what, at least I'm going to a place in a sport that I enjoy being around and watching and being a part of. Then it just becomes, the growing aspect of you as a professional is getting better at your skills, making your mistakes. And that's what's great about the minor leagues is I always tell young athletic trainers, and I also tell young players the same thing, is that the minor leagues is a great place to make mistakes. Now, that doesn't mean you can continue to make them, but it is a great place to make mistakes, learn from your mistakes, and grow from your mistakes. And I think for all of us that have been in the game for any amount of time would look back at their time in the minor leagues, and especially those of us that are still in the minor leagues, and look back early on in their careers and shake their head at some of the things that we thought was the right move or we thought was the appropriate thing to do at the time, and then realize, that we've grown from there. But all the best stories, all the best experiences, all the real growth you do as a clinician, as a person, as a professional happens in the minor leagues. And I was fortunate enough to really have some great mentors and some great leaders coming through my lower levels of the minor leagues to kind of allow me to grow and allow me to make those mistakes without having too much consequence on the back end.
And you talked about, a lot of the people you got to know at the minor league level, and Ben Potenziano with the Marlins, our guest last week, did the same. What are those relationships like as you continue to grow throughout your career? Is it cool seeing, colleagues and interns you worked with later on in your life, in your career in baseball, and just share a little bit about those relationships and how important those can be for you?
So, yeah, I've been very fortunate with just some of the people that have decided to give me their time over the years. Starting out with people like Mark Laton, who was, one of the forerunners of PBATs, and Herm Schneider, who for the longest time was the longest tenured head athletic trainer in baseball. So people like that early on in my career when I was a kid starting out that gave me their time it was invaluable. And it was just such I thought everyone got that time, but they didn't. And that's where now I look back and I realize how fortunate I was. And then when I started moving along in my career, obviously people that were here within my organization, like Kevin Rand and Doug Teeter, those were great kind of leaders and mentors that I've had in-house. But then what PBATS has allowed me to do is start to have a voice and a presence with some of the other professionals in the game, from Ron Porterfield to Jamie Reed to Tom Probst to Roger Kaplinger. You start these relationships and you ask these questions of these athletic trainers, and if they give you their time, you better take advantage of it. And I feel like I always have, and that's where I feel a lot of the growth of a leader and a professional in this setting happens from is taking those risks of reaching out to some of these people that you think in the game are unapproachable, and they've done so much and they've had so many years. And you just realize, like, you know what, they were in my shoes at one point and they're paying it forward now. And the same thing now that I've been a few years into my career is now I'm starting to have people I've hired or people that were interns here that are in baseball or out of baseball. And I just had an intern send me the book, former intern that sent me a book that he wrote, last month. So it's things like that where, you never know the paths that you cross with these individuals in the game or in the profession, and how they're going to affect you, and how they're going to steer you in the path that you've created.
Yeah, that's great insight for everybody listening. And obviously, many of our listeners are athletic training students. I think a ton of them would be very interested to hear about the life of a minor league medical and rehab coordinator. I'm sure many people outside of athletic training and the profession itself might be less familiar with that role. First, can you let our listeners know the main duties and responsibilities of that job?
Sure. And to be honest with you, my parents still don't even quite know what I do for a living. So it's really okay. And so I have to explain my role a lot. Because so you work for the Detroit Tigers. That's right. So you're in Detroit. No. Okay. So you're with one of the minor league teams. Well, no, that's not quite it either. So it's one of those jobs that's very unique to our setting, very unique to our profession. But basically and to that end, all 30 teams consider their position a little bit different. They run their position a little bit different. Their responsibilities are a little bit different. There's always a far-reaching type idea of what this role does, but it's very individualized per organization and skill strengths and things along those lines. But there's both clinical and administrative aspects to this job. So there's obviously long-term rehabilitations that go into it. It's preparing for spring training. So there's a lot of that clinical side still available, but there's also a lot of the administrative side. So I deal with a lot of players' insurance issues. I deal with the physicals during spring training. We do a lot of the axillary things like players that need therapeutic use exemption. So I'll handle that a little bit. So there's just a bigger scope of pieces to this puzzle of what this position does. And then on top of it, most often with most clubs, you're the direct supervisor for the minor league athletic trainer. So we have 9 to 11, depending on the year, certified athletic trainers that are working at our minor league affiliates and working at our complexes, and I'm their direct supervisor. So we're there to be a sounding board, to make sure that policy and procedure is carried out the right way, to make sure that morale is up and keep everything moving forward. So there's a lot of hats that the medical coordinator wears. There's also, a front office tie to it where we're doing medical reviews on prospective free agents that we're signing, and the draft comes into it as well. So now all these amateur players, we're giving risk assessments and making sure that we're giving our front office all the information they need. And so it's basically like being the head athletic trainer for the minor leagues, where you have a lot of different people pulling you in a lot of different directions, but you have to make sure that you're kind of on top of all of those different facets to make sure that everything runs smoothly.
That seems like an incredible amount of responsibility, first of all, but also an extremely fulfilling job. I mean, you're with your hands on the minor league aspects, working with your major league staff as well. That seems like an awesome opportunity. For those wondering, what is the path that most people in your position take to land a job as a medical coordinator for a Major League Baseball club? Are there a number of different paths? Is there a singular path that many have followed? If you could elaborate on that, that'd be great.
Sure. So I think one of the ways that you end up in a position like this is you hang around the ballpark all the time, and you're seen by everybody, and you show passion, you show love for what you do. And that's what kind of creates your ability to start becoming a leader and being a voice in a lot of these meetings and in these realms. So I think one of the things is you got to have a passion for the profession. You got to have a passion for where you're at, and you got to want more of yourself. That's the number one kind of characteristic and character trait, I would say, for being a medical coordinator. But as far as the path, it's usually you start as a minor league athletic trainer, whatever level you end up in. And some people will change based off life experience and life changes. So maybe they want to start a family because it's not as much travel in this role. You're not with a team. So sometimes it's the athletic trainer that's come up through the minor leagues, and you know what, maybe they want to have a family. Maybe they want to do more administrative work. Maybe that's one of their skill sets. So it's definitely not a position where everybody fits it. Not everybody even wants it, but the athletic trainer that has a sense of bigger purpose, that's who really kind of fits these roles the best, because there is so much asked of you, And you have to be able to give that to your players, to your profession, and to your organization.
And you're managing such a huge role with the Detroit Tigers organization. Seeing as you have your hands on the pulse of every affiliate, in addition to that, what's the communication like with the Major League athletic training staff on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. So, you look at communication is the biggest buzzword in every facet of business, that everybody wants to do it better and everybody says they don't do it well. And I feel that as athletic trainers, because we're constantly communicating, we're constantly trading currency with our players, and we're constantly talking with front office, and there's so many different stakeholders that our world revolves around. Is communication is such a big piece to our world that I feel we do a better job than most at making sure that things aren't missed and things aren't, communicated effectively. So for me, I'll speak with our head athletic trainer or our director of medical services, whoever and most times both of them on a daily basis, whether that be about an injury in the minor leagues, whether that be a long-term rehab that we have in Lakeland that's, being overseen by me, but, obviously our head athletic trainer has a lot of stake in the game there too on his return. And so that there's constant communication on all of the player end of things for sure. That's just a no-brainer. They have to be able to know because there's people that are asking them questions, and they have to be able to speak, intelligently on the situation, because it only looks, poor on all of us if, they have to turn around and say, well, let me make a call and see if I can get that answer for you. So being able to make sure that they have all the information they need is critical and clutch for all of us to do what we do and make sure our players move forward. And then on top of it, it is also, we're not in just the business of making players better. We're in the business of making athletic trainers better and stronger. And so that communication is how do we lean into some of the strengths of our sports medicine staff in the minor leagues? How can we make them better? How do we give them more support to get them the goals that they want to achieve? So there's much more to it than, say, even 10 years ago when I started this position of the conversations we're having. It's now gone straight from only player and only, sports medicine focus and what the daily issues are in the minor leagues to, okay, now we got to start looking at a 30,000 foot view here of how do we create a better content for the culture that we're trying to create here? And how do we lift up our athletic trainers and make them stronger as individuals to make our entire group a much more cohesive and strong system?
That's great. And Corey, earlier you mentioned Gene Monahan, longtime Yankees athletic trainer, an absolute legend in the profession. Besides Gino, who were some of the role models you looked up to in the field of athletic training, whether that's Kevin Rand with the Tigers or anyone outside of your organization as well?
Yeah, absolutely. The first one that really comes to mind is Herm Schneider. I was fortunate enough to be in grad school at the same time that his daughter was a softball player there. So he would come down in the fall and watch softball games, and I would bug him from the stands and pick his brain and ask him questions. So having Hermie as a sounding board over the years and being just a beacon of support for me has been great. And then, as I said, getting into PBATs, and that's where my growth really has taken off, is because I volunteer, because I want to do more with PBATs, because I feel like that's leadership in a nutshell. You can be a leader at work, and that's great, but true leaders are ones that are giving service outside of their day-to-day positional leadership. So that's where I feel like my relationships and my network has kind of grown with some of these big names in sports medicine. Obviously, Gene Monahan was one of them early on that I got to meet and know a little bit, but Mark Laton, Larry Starr, Ron Porterfield, Jamie Reed, these are the big names in sports medicine that, I've been able to pick their brain now, and now we've become colleagues versus a mentor-peer type relationship. And then one step further, it's the physicians, because of the wealth of knowledge that they have and the support that they've given athletic training and PBATs, from Dr. Andrews to Keith Meister to Dr. Elatrosh to Dr. Tom Graham, Dr. Eaton. All of these people have taken, a liking to the questions that I ask them and want to make me better. And I can't thank them enough either for all that they've done to kind of push me up and push me forward.
And like you said, you've had the opportunity to pick the brains of some of the most legendary and influential athletic trainers in the profession. Now you are in a kind of a unique position as you grow in your career where people are coming to you for advice. So when that happens, what is some of the best advice you can provide to younger athletic trainers working professionally or students just looking to get into professional baseball athletic training, whether that's an internship with PBATs or anything like that? What would you tell the students who are looking to break in?
So you're right. The thing that's kind of an awkward moment is when you all of a sudden start getting the questions. And that happened a few years ago, especially during the COVID time when I ended up being a point person for a lot of the minor league athletic trainers. So having that voice now of somebody that's been there and is looked up to by other athletic trainers, it's a strange change and shift in your career, but it's something I've welcomed and I really enjoy. And I've taken that one step further with the students that I talk to and with the possible interns and possible full-time employees that we interview is, the main thing in any piece of athletic training, it's trying to find out what your main goal is and then working backwards. So if you want to be a head athletic trainer in Major League Baseball, if you want to be a director of sports medicine in Major League Baseball, if you want to be head athletic trainer in football, okay, now we have our end goal. Let's take steps backwards. How are we going to attain that goal? And I feel that there's so many students, especially in today's world, that they just see opportunities and they want to jump at every opportunity, or they want to go down a different opportunity because it's got some sort of pomp and circumstance behind it, or if it has a big sport behind it, or a big team or a big city behind it, and they kind of get off track of what their end goal is. So everything that you should do as a student coming up should focus towards whatever that end goal is. So if you want to work in professional baseball and you want to be a head athletic trainer in professional baseball, well, step one would be, how do I get my foot in the door? And is that through an internship? Is that just getting certified and applying and then taking my lumps in my first year? Is never having that experience? But there's opportunities out there, and don't ever feel like one opportunity is the only opportunity. You have to really look at each opportunity as an individual opportunity and go, you know what, if this one doesn't work out, the next one's going to be even bigger and better for me. And this is how I'm going to take my career to the next level. So that's the message I like to give to the students that I'm speaking with and possible interns, possible full-time employees is, hey, what are your goals? Because they're going to be different than mine. And for a long time, I tried to put my own goals on a lot of the people that I worked with and that worked under me and in that regard. And that wasn't a good way for me to be a leader and a good way for me to try to, bring up our department. So it took years for me to step back and go, no, I need to find out what makes this person tick, what this person sees of themselves. And then we've got to figure out how to get that path from present moment to that end goal. What do we have to do now to get them to where they need to go? So that's basically my message to the students of today is find out what you want to do, make that your end goal, and let's figure out the path to get there.
Yeah, that's really great advice for students and other young professionals to hear from you. I'd like to take it back a bit to earlier when you discussed your career path in athletic training. As some listeners may know, last week we talked with Ben Potenziano of the Marlins, and he did an awesome job of sharing with our listeners that athletic training isn't just showing up for the game, providing care for athletes. There's much more to it than that. So, Corey, can you share more insight into, if there is a quote unquote normal day in the life of someone in your position?
So that's what's nice about this position. There is normal-ish hours, but there's definitely never a normal day. So it's a much more locked in day-to-day schedule. So it starts early in the morning. We're first shift athletic trainers in baseball so that we can be available for the second shift athletic trainers, which is the major league team, and then all of our affiliates that play at night. So having the ability to be there for those athletic trainers and those athletes, most times via phone, but being available during that time without having my attention taken any place else is really the main goal of the medical coordinator. So my day starts anywhere between 6 and 7 in the morning, and there's administrative work that goes into it. So that might be a bunch of emails, and they could be from doctors, they could be from front office, they could be from the other athletic trainers, it could be anyone within the organization where I may have a role in their day-to-day. I catch up on that. That's a main piece to my position. And my wife, unfortunately, hates my phone, and she thinks there's not a person that's on it more than I am. And that's a tough piece to this role, but it's being available 25 hours, 8 days a week is a critical piece to being the medical coordinator and to doing the job effectively. Obviously that takes its toll on some of the work-life balance, but being an athletic trainer in baseball also has issues as a work-life balance. So it's just trying to navigate all of that and making sure that you have time away from your job and understanding that some things do have to wait until tomorrow. But then, if your role as a medical coordinator has to deal with long-term rehabilitation, that's usually a morning thing. So we're usually getting those players, whether they're major league players, minor league players, post-op, just long-term injuries. We'll bring them to Florida where we have the best weather, the best facilities. We'll give them a better attention than the athletic trainer at the team could, because they have to get that team ready to take the field every night. So we pull those athletes out of that situation and put them in their own situation so that they get better attention, better care, and also vice versa, the players at the affiliates get better attention and better care. So that will take up the majority of our morning and into our early afternoon, whether that be, baseball specific work that we're doing with our players, whether that be rehabilitation, whether that be post-op treatment, care, and management. That's where all of that comes into play in our morning session. And in the afternoon, it's making myself available for now front office questions, my affiliate athletic trainers, those athletes, what issues, what problems are popping up. Then we take it to the house around dinner time, which is, you would think would be a great way to finish the day, but nope. Now we have 5 games to worry about. So now I'm watching either on Game Tracker, or I'm watching the games to see if anybody's getting hurt during the games. And if a player does get hurt, now I have to be the conduit of information from the affiliate to the front office. So it's a very long day, but again, it takes a certain person that wants to have that responsibility and wants to have that type of world to really make sure that everything is taken care of. So basically, it's a long day of just communicating with other people to make sure that all stakeholders in all situations have what they need to move forward with decisions.
That's an extremely demanding schedule, as anyone who just heard you talk about that could agree. But really awesome to think about how much insight you have into the entire Tigers organization from top to bottom. Being really involved must be very fulfilling. You mentioned in your answer there the rehab and treatment aspect in your day-to-day. I want to dive deeper now into that aspect as well. So it seems like the products and innovations in the field of athletic training have really been incredible when it comes to taking care of the athletes on your team. Can you talk a bit about the technological advancements in athletic training that you've seen over your career?
Absolutely. And that's still the fun part of the job, right? We're constantly, as athletic trainers, wanting to work with players. That's what we went to school for. That's why we chose athletic training. It wasn't to do billing and paperwork and submitting forms and talking to the commissioner's office. Those are all pieces to the job, but the main focus, the main fun of athletic training and what everyone that gets into this profession really loves to do is working with athletes. So over the years, what's been great is that, PBATS has been in the forefront of pushing both education and innovation within our professional baseball realm. So we have athletes that work with other professionals during the off season, and they'll come back with, I use this machine, or I use this potion, or I use this type system in the off season. Well, it's our duty to make sure that we're on the cutting edge of all of this information. And PBATS has always been that place that all of that starts, where we meet and we talk and we listen to vendors and we take meetings with different companies and different products. And it's great too, because MLB is also in the same realm as PBATS, where it's pushing these initiatives and making sure that we're giving player health and care the undivided attention that it needs, and making sure that we're staying ahead of the curve and not on the curve or behind the curve. So what we did 10 years ago, to be honest with you, what we did 10 minutes ago sometimes is different. And there's just been a bigger push with technology as far as player tracking. So now we're trying to figure out readiness scores, and we're trying to figure out fatigue levels and hydration levels. And then on top of it, we're really pushing recovery. So there's so many more different modalities that we're encompassing in our athletic training facilities that are really pushing recovery, and we're diving further into sleep sciences. And Major League Baseball, it became, took on a sponsor with Charlotte's Web, that's a CBD company, and the cannabis landscape is such a big piece to the research. So there's constant innovation going on, and it's driven because of the professionals in PBATS and MLB that feel that we need to give our athletes everything possible to make sure that they're putting out the best product and that they're safe and healthy when they go out and take the field.
And Corey, you mentioned briefly there Charlotte's Web and the CBD partnership with Major League Baseball. What could you share more with people on the outside about how that's going to impact the game going forward, the players in your care, and everything related to that?
So I think this is a great landscape for athletics to really dive into now. I think the stigma of cannabis is kind of deteriorating, and it's not looked at the same way. And again, this is not anything but education for what it possibly could do and how it could possibly affect a player and make them better. And again, this space is such a evolving space, and it's not something that, to my point earlier, where 10 minutes ago, things have changed even in this space of where it could be and what we could move forward with. But what it allows our players to have is another safe, reliable product and a safe, reliable means to recovery, to better sleep, to a lot of the things that, unfortunately, we in the past had used products and different things that may not have been as safe. And it's unfortunate because it was just what we had available at the time. Now we have this great science and this evolving understanding of this space. And we really are starting to see that there is huge benefit to, CBD and especially in our recovery. And it's not something that's looked down as a deterrent. And the fact that MLB and PBATS is in full support of this is now just allowing us to educate our athletes on one more way of making their bodies healthier and making their success greater and their product on the field better.
Yeah, that's great insight. Obviously, the goal is to treat the players with the best possible care. So it makes sense that adding those tools is super helpful. Anyone that knows you, shifting gears here a little bit, knows how passionate you are about the profession of athletic training and growing your skills in the game. When it comes to that passion, a lot of athletic trainers we've spoken to really enjoy seeing an injured player back on the field and things like that. Is that something that really means a lot to you, or is there something else in the profession that really fulfills you as a person?
Early on in my career, it was always about the player getting back in that moment. And it still is. Don't get me wrong. That's still such a big piece to our world. But as I've gotten older and taken more of a leadership role in my organization and also in PBATS, is seeing those around me, lift up and do great things. It's more of when I see my A-ball athletic trainer or my AAA athletic trainer get a player back in a quick amount of time, and they go out and they have 3-for-4 night, or they throw 6 innings shutout or what have you. That's now great because we've now created this net for this athletic trainer to grow and succeed. And now they're in turn getting their athletes better, faster, and more effectively and safely. So I think it's now just kind of shifted gears from, it was all about me and the work I did with my athlete in front of me, to now it's like, no, the work that's done behind the scenes to create this atmosphere is what is now the most fulfilling for me.
And talk a little bit about that return to play aspect. I know there's a number of things that are fulfilling for you as an athletic trainer and a leader of minor league affiliates. But in returning to play and getting those athletes back on the field, how gratifying can that be for you and for your staff overall?
I mean, that's the best feeling in the world. I mean, we constantly are pushing our athletes to limits to try to get them to do things bigger, better, faster, stronger, all these different buzzwords, if you will. But when we're able to play a major role in returning an athlete to play, there's no better feeling. That's why you get into the game. You don't get in to learn a new shoulder exercise. You don't get into the profession to, like I said, do administrative work. You get into the profession to have a strong effect on getting that athlete from injured to healthy, or keeping a healthy. And, when you're a supervisor, you're seeing this, it lifts up the entire department when a player comes back and they either thank us in the media or they send a post-game text or any of those little things that goes such a long way for us, for the profession as a whole, because anytime any athletic trainer does something great, it helps the entire profession, whether that be the situation with the Bills and the Bengals a few weeks ago with Damar Hamlin. I mean, that lifts up athletic training as a whole. And we see it day to day with players in our game when they're coming back from long-term surgeries. Those are the big pieces that it doesn't just, it's such a bigger moment for the entire profession and the entire organization, the entire everything than just yourself. And that's what's so great about sports medicine and athletic training.
And to touch on the Bengals and Bills and obviously the Damar Hamlin situation, that was, chilling for many people, even just viewers of sports and sports fans in general. But as an athletic trainer in the profession, how did that make you feel? And how cool is it to see some of your colleagues in different sports, in the NFL, for example, really, take center stage and do such an amazing job with that situation?
Yeah, it was a great example of athletic trainers and sports medicine professionals doing what we're trained to do, and they showed the best of what we were capable of that night. That was truly incredible, and the outcome was directly related to the work that was done on that field. There's no doubt about it in my mind, and I think a lot of clinicians and sports medicine professionals across the country would agree. It shows you what preparation, what diligence, what wanting to make sure that we have every T crossed and every I dotted. That's what can happen when you care and have a passion for the profession, and that's no bigger stage than that. And what it did was, what's interesting is it also gave us as clinicians across the board a little wake up call, like, hey, make sure you're doing things right. Make sure that you're practicing your EAP. Make sure you're going above and beyond and checking everything and talking with the other team and making sure you know where emergency personnel is during a game or a practice. So I feel like obviously it's a big prideful moment for us, but it's also a time to reflect on our own houses and go, okay, are we in order here? Because that's what happens when everything goes perfect. And those professionals couldn't have done it in a better light or a better manner. And that just really showed what sports medicine and athletic training is capable of. And I'm very proud of the work they did.
Yeah, as we all are. It was really an amazing scene. And getting a player back on the field, like we talked about earlier, obviously priority number one for the athletic training staff. And part of doing that is growing your skill set and staying sharp, like you mentioned. I know you're certified in a number of different sports medicine areas, obviously a certified athletic trainer. Can you share some information with the listeners and most importantly, athletic training students about the overall importance of staying certified, continuing your education, and just the constant drive that you've shown to learn more about the profession of athletic training and adding on to your skill sets?
Absolutely. And for the longest time early in my career, I wanted everything that I could do hands-on. I wanted every massage technique. I wanted every dry needling course. I wanted every manipulation course. If there was something that could be hands-on to help my player on a day-to-day, that's what I wanted to do. And luckily enough, when you're in a setting like this, we're not just asked to stay up to speed with the newest and the best. Like, it's a demand on us to make sure that we stay up to speed on the newest and the best. So we're constantly being pushed by our own organizations to get better. And so it works out very well because we're able to take these courses and grow our skill set that way. But, in recent years, the change is just how I looked at my continuing education. And although all of that is still important, I still do continuing ed opportunities with manual therapies and different things that help me as a clinician. One of the big pieces that I've recently taken a head on is I've gone back to school to get my doctorate of athletic training at Florida International University because that program really focuses on leadership, focuses on an entrepreneurial mindset, and also focuses on a globalization of sports medicine and athletic training. So it's taking one step past just being a great clinician and going, okay, how can I make those around me better? How can I change my mindset? How can I change my thinking of a situation? And how can I take all the pieces that I know clinically, and now add this piece on and help a department and create a culture, and people always think that an individual creates a culture. And I'm a firm believer that the content creates culture. It's not an individual, it's content. So how can I help drive the content that our sports medicine department is creating or doing to make sure that the culture of our whole organization from top down in all facets is growing and improving. So I think that's been the biggest change in my focus. Is it's just been not as heavy hands-on, which I'm still doing obviously, but it's now saying, okay, there's so many aspects to athletic training that just, the day-to-day clinical skills are great and you need those and they're wonderful to keep honing in on, but there's other parts to this and bigger parts to this that you have to continue to focus on. And PBATS is such a proponent of education that when I told my colleagues that I was going back to school, obviously they thought I was nuts, and I still think I may have been a little bit too, but the support that I got from those around me was great. And that's where professional baseball has really set me up to take on this challenge, especially while doing my day-to-day work, because of that network around me and how the profession has pushed me to have so many hats and have so many responsibilities. Finding an hour or two a day to carve out time for this is something that now I enjoy doing, and I've been prepared for because of all the different time management skills that I've kind of learned through my years in professional baseball.
Corey, this has been awesome. You've shared so much quality information that students and even young professionals can take forward in their careers. To wrap up today's episode, we're going to finish with a quick Q&A segment that we call Extra Bases. In this segment, I'm going to ask you 4 quick questions to share some insight into some of your favorite things about athletic training. So we'll start out at first base. You've made a handful of stops along the way to your current role with the Tigers. What was your favorite and most enjoyable stop along the way as you worked your way toward where you are today?
It has to be our, at the time, low A affiliate in Grand Rapids, Michigan, our West Michigan Whitecaps. I met my wife there my second year working there, so I have to say that. It's for no other reason but that.
Clearly a very important milestone for you and your family there.
That's right.
Making our way to second base, one piece of advice you got during your career from a colleague or a mentor that's always stuck with you throughout your time?
It would be, you have to know what you're going to do with the information you get. So if you're going to seek out the information, you better have a plan with what you're going to do with that information. So this profession is something where you ask questions. So if you're going to ask the question, you better be okay with the answer and know what to do with it.
Great. That's super helpful. Moving on to third base, we know you mentioned Grand Rapids and the importance that place has in your life. What is your favorite city to visit on the road when traveling?
So this is an easy one because it's just right around the corner, but I love going over to Tampa. I went to grad school in Tampa, and I just love that city in general. So anytime we go over to play spring training against the Yankees, the Phillies, anywhere over there on the west coast of Florida is all good for me.
Gotcha. And moving on toward home plate here, you've been in baseball for a long time, done some awesome things in your career, including pursuing your doctorate as well, which is amazing. But when it comes to professional baseball, did you have a welcome to professional baseball moment at some point during your first year or in your time in general as the medical coordinator for the Tigers?
One of the things that I remember early on as an intern, I was able to make a lot of mistakes, but I remember bringing a player over to a doctor in St. Petersburg, and he wanted to take his car. And when I got in it and realized that the rims probably cost what my car cost, that was my moment where I said, okay, things are a little bit different. And he let me drive it on the way home, which was even more ridiculous because I, at 22 years old, should not have been doing that. and it was the one and only time I've ever driven in a car like that. And I'll never forget that moment.
Yeah, the subtle differences between the athletic training staff and the players can be quite apparent at times, I'm sure. Well, Corey,
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for joining the show. As always, we really appreciate your time and your dedication to PBATS and just the overall profession of athletic training. And we hope to have you on the show again soon.
Thanks so much, Sam. I really appreciate your time.
And that wraps up this episode. Thank you for listening to Inside Athletic Training, a podcast from the Professional Baseball Athletic Trainers Society. a show for athletic training students, educators, and professionals who want to learn more about life as an athletic trainer in Major and Minor League Baseball. If you've enjoyed the show, head over to pbats.com to gain access to other free resources. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, thanks again for listening.